As I said, I promised to bring Brand Thornton back. He has a really good handle on this financial world and how it operates and what it's doing to us. And I just want to remind everybody of, and I know you already know this, but what was the one time that Jesus got upset enough to where he resorted to physical violence? It was with the financial interests, the money changers as they were called at the time, changing Roman coins into coins that were proper for use in the temple treasury, the Corban, and how they charged interest and the exchange rate. And what it did to the people, it actually took their substance and made them poor. And that's an important concept to understand. When you steal a person's substance, you are in fact stealing a portion of their life force. That is truth. And I want you to listen to Brand today and think about that and think about what's happened, because we are living in one of the most evil times of history. Now, he's going to explain some things that have happened and things that will have happened or will happen, and how it's all interrelated, and I hope you take note. And then I'll have a few comments afterwards. Okay, here we go. Okay, and as I promised, here's Brand Thornton. He's going to give us a rundown on the financial system and how it enslaves us and what we can do about it, especially the problems with the Federal Reserve. He is one of the initial pioneers in trying to get this system resolved as far as giving us our freedom back, returning it to the people. And so I'll just give it over to Brand Thornton now. Brand, go ahead and let us know a little bit about what you'd like to give to us today.
Well, thank you, Roy. And to all my fellow Americans out there, it's a wonderful Sunday, but you know, there's things that are on the horizon that we've got to be very concerned about. Right now, we're going through a government shutdown, which I do not think is all that bad of a thing. You know, I look at most of them as misplaced welfare recipients that actually don't provide a single thing for us. They think they're indispensable. They want you to believe they're indispensable, that we can't survive without them, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. We decided to get back to basics. KISS. You've all heard of KISS. Keep it simple, Sam. And I think that most Americans, if they really had a grasp on how this financial system works, that there'd be a revolution tomorrow. Well, folks, we came up with a little illustration here to describe the paradigm that we are in. And I'm sure all of you will recognize what this is. It is a checkbook. It has a ledger in it to help us keep it balanced. The paradigm that we are in is, if I give this checkbook to somebody else, and every time I write a check out of that to pay for goods and services, I have to pay it back to them with interest. That's the exact scenario that we live in today under the Federal Reserve. Just think about that. Just think about that. It's the same exact situation.
And if I can interrupt here, Brand, it'd be the same thing as if you're actually giving them the money in your account and they charge you for being able to use your own money. They actually charge interest to you for using your own money. Is that correct?
That is correct. And with all this compounding interest, it gets more ridiculous every day. You know, a $16 trillion debt, can you imagine the kind of interest that we're paying on that? The fact of the matter is that during the Grace Commission, during the Ronald Reagan administration, they researched how much money that we actually, or how much money that we pay in taxes actually goes for the maintenance and upkeep of this country. Not one dime. It all goes to pay interest on a fraudulent debt. So that's the paradigm we live under. So every check that you've written and you have bought goods and services, and specifically goods, is subject to, number one, repossession. And if your house, foreclosures. How would you feel about that? Obviously you'd realize that I'm a thief and I've been stealing from you, and none of you would stand for that. I just described to you exactly how the Federal Reserve banking system works. Number 2, keeping it simple. All true wealth comes from human production. It doesn't come from government. It doesn't come from any government agency. It doesn't come from anybody but the American people, or anybody gets out and produces something, whether you build it with your hands, or you work for a company that builds it, or whether you're a truck driver delivering goods, a Pizza Hut delivery boy. Those are goods and services. That all comes from people, okay? And we need a medium of exchange. And I said this in our last video, that let's say you have a bunch of dental work done and you owe your dentist X number of dollars. If you go down to him and you try to give him a bunch of chickens or a cow, in case you're a farmer, or whatever you have, you try to do some bartering system, he's not going to want it. We live in a streamlined, progressive society where not everybody lives on a farm, or not everybody has access to ranching commodities like cattle, things like that. You want to be able to go down to the store and have a medium of exchange that you can buy your chickens or your eggs and your steaks and your milk and things like that. So that's all money is good for. Is just a medium of exchange in goods and services. Now, the federal government doesn't even give you the money. It's a privately owned banking institution, and is owned by what I call the elite white European aristocracy, and specifically I'll name the big name, and that's the Rothschilds. And these people are subhuman, but they own our banking system. They own 8 major banks that are all part of the Federal Reserve banking system, and they set up this Ponzi scheme. And a Ponzi scheme, or a pyramid, if you don't understand, is ultimately all the wealth ends up at the top of that pyramid. And I find it interesting that you're seeing all these Illuminati symbols all the time from your Hollywood type people. Athletes are always running around going like this. Well, that's the pyramid. And anyhow, getting back to it, a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid is when all the wealth ends up in one spot. Bankers, or the banking system, always makes money, regardless of what the situation is. When the economy collapses, they repossess everything. They repossess real wealth, homes, vehicles, whatever you have. They take it from, they call it repossession, which is an abuse of the English language. They never possessed it in the first place. The only thing they actually possessed was a Ponzi scheme. So, and it's a dictatorial type situation. They got laws enacted through politicians that they paid off to get these laws, so that their Federal Reserve notes is the only legal medium of exchange. Now, we see gold and silver is making quite a comeback, and we can actually give Ronald Reagan some of that credit, because prior to his administration, you couldn't have more than 2 ounces of gold and silver in your possession. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that like a big red flag going off? I mean, where does government get that kind of authority to tell you what you can or cannot own, especially in something that is considered has been considered money for thousands of years in all countries? It is respected in every country in the world and every time as a medium of exchange in goods and services. So anyhow, they print this money. They don't print the interest. It's all guaranteed by the American taxpayer to be paid back with interest. It's a hopeless situation. Now, it's hidden in plain sight. Every day we hear about they keep wanting to raise the debt ceiling. Well, there's one big reason why this Obama administration wants to raise the debt ceiling right now, is they just don't have the money to enforce Obamacare. And this Obamacare will be the greatest dictatorial law that has ever been passed. It will strip you of every God-given right that you have. You will become total slaves to this elite white European aristocracy, which Obama is basically a puppet to. So, it's hidden in plain sight. We hear about it every day, raising the debt ceiling. Did you ever ask yourself, who do we owe? Who do we owe? I mean, they're talking about raising the debt ceiling. We're in debt to somebody. Everybody needs to ask that question. Who do we owe? And once you understand who you owe, then you're going to start wanting to know, how did this all happen? How did this come about that we get ourselves into a $16 trillion debt? The country with the richest resources in the world, the greatest workforce in the world, the greatest a country with the greatest technology in the world, and we're $16 trillion in debt to who? Anybody, please. I know what the answer is, and it's fraud. You know, they say that we're going to lend us the money. Well, that's an abuse of the English language. To say you lend implies that you're going to receive something of value. No, they just authorize the printing of more paper. That's all it is. And because the American people have faith in this paper, they go out and they produce. They go out, they build things, they manufacture things, and at that time, this paper has gained value. And it's at that time that they come through the back door through taxes and paybacks, and they steal our production. And then they take that and they use it against us. They weave the rope that they're going to put around our neck to choke us to death. You get that? You're paying for the devices to destroy you. How insidious, how sick is that we allow that to happen? Are we also dumbed down? We can't see what's happening. It's plain sight. It's right there. Raise the debt ceiling. You know, Ron Paul is talking about some of his constituents in Congress and the Senate, and he says they drop in every once in a while and ask him a few questions. And one of the questions they ask him is, how does this exactly work? He was flabbergasted. I mean, you can listen to him on YouTube where he talks about this. Your elected officials, the majority of them, don't know how this Ponzi scheme even works. All they know is they want to collect a paycheck and they're beholden to it. You know what they call that? They call it bribery. They call it blackmail. That's what it's called. And you know, it's about time we, as American people, we wake up and we do something about it. Now, what is it we can do about it? We've reached a point where there's really only a couple things we can do about it. You know, I've had a lot of friends that were in the military, and one of the things that they are taught when you're a foot soldier is you never, ever allow yourself to get in a position that you cannot get out of. You start fighting the moment you realize that your position has been compromised. Actually, you fight before that. You do not allow your position to be compromised. Okay? We have been compromised. And if all you have to do is look around at the events that's happening in the world, mainly the United States, the militarization of our local law enforcement. I mean, good grief. Every time you turn around, just like this Miriam, this young black lady there in D.C., give me a break. She made a mistake. She was confused. And you got half a dozen guys pumping bullets into her car, and she's got a little 2-year-old in the back seat. And what kind of people think that way? What kind of people will allow themselves to be coerced to enforce unconstitutional laws? You see the results of it just in that thing alone. And it happens all over America. It happens every day. So, yeah, we're in a mess. And so getting back to what I was saying, how do you fight it? You do it this is what I'm doing here. You educate everybody you can. I've elected to drop out of the system. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, I've talked to them several times. The ones you talk to, they're just minions. They don't even understand the law. You know, there's a few out there, and once they did, they got out of it, like Joe Bannister, Mary Jackson Peel, a few others. When they realized that they were still on the plantation. I love Sherry Jackson Peel. As a black lady, I got the greatest respect for this woman. And you know what she said? You know what she said to America? Let's get off the plantation. For all you white people out there that got yours, and you need a black woman, and I'm not disparaging black women, but as far as society goes, they're probably the most looked down at all. She had more guts, more kapuza, more gonads than 99% of the white people in America today. Okay? That's in your face, America. That's in your face, all you elite white men that will not stick up and do one single thing for your country. You know, half you people, the majority of the people that go into the military is just for economics because they can't get a job anyplace else. You know, they got to become misplaced welfare recipients like so many other federal employees. So, okay, I'll back off of that just a little bit. As you can tell, I get riled up on some of this stuff because some of my role models, believe it or not, are people like Sherry Jackson Peel and others, Thomas Sowell, Mr. Carson, which Obama sent the IRS after to shut him up. So here we are. You know, D-Day, high noon is upon us, and we got to do something. So, you know, I would say America, this thing has reached a point that they own us to a great extent, and, you know, we got to be willing to make some sacrifices for our children, for our grandchildren. You ever think about that? Especially you in law enforcement. What about your children? What about your grandchildren? The military? Come on, grow some gonads, okay? You get an unlawful order, what do? You say no. They pressure you, you fight back, okay? When it reaches that point, I mean, when your hands are tied behind your back and you're sitting on the platform and they're getting ready to pull the rope to drop you out, and rope's around your neck, there's not a damn thing you can do at that time. You're done. And you have the responsibility to fight, not just for your country, but for your children, for your grandchildren, for your neighbor. Look at when you go home tonight, look at your children. Look at your grandchildren. Look at them. The world that you're going to leave is for them. What is it going to be? What kind of world are you going to leave for them? Are you going to leave a total dictatorship like Obama and his administration? These are demons, devils. They don't care. I take that back. They do care. They care in this way. They want to kill you and your family. You overpopulated the world as far as they're concerned. You are a consumer. You have stripped Mother Nature bare, and they want to get rid of you. Okay? This world, they have actually said, this world is theirs. Remember that. When you go home and you look at your children, your grandchildren, when you look at your neighbor, the people that you go out and you barbecue with, and you have a few beers with, and you talk to, and you put your arms around them, and you tell them how much you appreciate them and love them, they are in danger. You are your brother's keeper. Not just your family, but you are also your brother's keeper. And you have a responsibility to your fellow Americans. So many of you took an oath of office, to uphold the Constitution of the United States, to defend it against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And anything that goes contrary to the Constitution of the United States is slavery, is dictatorship, is death, it is destruction. Those principles never change. They are eternal. As far back as you want to go in history, look at what dictators and tyrants have tried to do to enslave people in any way they could. And financially is the number one ways that they enslave people, just like Roy was talking about. Usury. Jesus got so upset, he flogged them, he overturned their temple, tables in the temple, and they threw them out because they were stealing from the people, and that was going to go to the Romans. And the Romans had their sword over Israel's head, the children of Israel at that time. So, anyhow, I think at this particular time, I would like to thank Roy. I pray to God, people wake up. Please wake up. Everything depends upon you waking up. Roy just brought something to my attention, wanted me to elaborate a little bit on it, but Jesus was a political insurrectionist. And the powers that be at that time, the Sanhedrin and the Romans, they used his demonstration in the temple as an excuse to have him crucified. And so he made a statement. He made a very, very strong statement that his life he would sacrifice to keep his people out of that bondage. And they looked at that as, a direct threat to their political supremacy, their dictatorship, and they decided at that time they had to crucify him. Oh yeah, another John F. Kennedy. A lot of people always wonder, what got John F. Kennedy killed? What was his great sin against whoever that got him killed? Well, he just signed H.R., I believe it was 100011, which made silver a legal means of exchange of goods and services in the United States. People, anytime a precious metal that can be circulated in it's called solvent money. And now that we're on the subject, Obama is doing everything he can right now to shut down gold mines across the nation. They just had a big raid on a gold mine somewhere with SWAT teams, EPA SWAT teams. This is just the beginning. Because anytime you have a medium of exchange that these people cannot control, it circulates in the system, and goods and services are freely exchanged with this medium of exchange. And this promotes industry, it promotes capitalism, and things are built on, we're back on the road to recovery. Can't have that, cannot have that, okay? And Jesus understood that very well. Now, he believed in a united order, or having all things in common, which ultimately is the best way to go, because anytime you have to use something for a medium of exchange, whoever gets control of that medium of exchange, complete control of it, owns the people. They control the purse strings, so they own you.
Jefferson said that, as a matter of fact. He would rather face a standing army than a central bank.
Yes.
That controls the currency of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Rothschild said, let me control the currency, and I care not who makes a country's laws.
Exactly.
So that's what that is exactly illustrative of what you're saying.
Yes, yes. And so right now there's a war on gold and silver. And there was a book written by Anthony some years ago, and he's still quite prevalent in the educational field, but it's called The War on Gold. And he brought up a real interesting thing. Just about the time the gold mines in northern Nevada were coming online, the bankers realized that there was a huge amount of this gold available. It was called molecular gold. And it was starting to come into the financial system, and was being used as a medium of exchange. And there's an old saying that good money always will replace bad money. Specie money, fiat money, all paper is bad money, okay? And gold and silver is good money. And this was exactly what was happening. And the world bankers saw this as a threat. At that particular time, gold was going for like $280 an ounce. They put $7 trillion of gold on the open market.
And that was paper, it wasn't for real.
Yeah, it was considered, you could use it to get gold for it. In other words, you could exchange it for gold.
But the gold didn't actually exist. They created this in paper.
And it drove the price of gold down tremendously. The interesting thing is these gold mines never missed a beat. They never did miss a beat. And then the Clinton administration got the word from up above that you got to do something about it. Well, they actually did everything they could. They forced every one of these guys working on this mine to get a federal firearms license because they were handling blasting powder. Okay, they forced it. Well, guess what? They did it. They went and got their FFL licenses, and then they got together with the Sierra Club, and the Sierra Club. How hilarious that was! They filed lawsuits against the state of Nevada, stating these gold mines were taking place on lands where there was a very distinct subspecies of mule deer. I mean, this is how desperate they were. And Nevada Department of Wildlife was forced into doing some research, and I forget who the commissioner was at that time, but it was kind of, actually, it turned out to be very hilarious. He said, we've never even seen a deer on any of those lands. So they were absolutely desperate. So again, this gives you an idea just how important this solvent money is, because here's how it works, folks. As the buying power, the purchasing power of precious metals goes up, it stimulates mining. Okay, there's a lag time there. It takes some time to pull it out of the ground, and it goes to the Federal Gold Exchange, and then it's exchanged for computer entries or actual cash. The point being, it wasn't borrowed. And if you have an unlimited bank account or an unlimited bankroll, which gold and silver is, they will eventually lose. And because of modern technology, the amount of precious metals coming out of the ground is amazing. So in Obamacare, a lot of people don't know this. Did you know there's a provision to tax 1,000% every dollar over $1,000 an ounce? What the hell is that doing in Obamacare? You telling me they don't know what's going on? You telling me that they don't have designs to destroy this economy and destroy this people? I mean, everything he has done so far, his administration, his regime has done, is to destroy our economy. I mean, look what's happening. You got children that were out on their own, moving back with their parents, bringing their kids. Everybody's had to, pull in their wings. There's a condition that medical profession describes when a person is going into hypothermia. And I forget the exact name of it, but all the blood, the warm blood, it goes from the extremities and goes to the heart and the brain just to survive. This is what Americans are doing. We're cutting back everywhere, every place that we can, just to survive, just to keep our homes, just to keep food on the table. And look how many can't do that. I see people on the street corners all the time, mothers with their children on street corners all the time, begging for food. Elderly people, veterans, young people. It's gotten so bad, I just can't believe it. Every freaking street corner, you got somebody out with a sign. We are brother's keepers, and we got to put this to rest. We got to stop this insidious drive to enslave us and to destroy us, because this is just, as bad as it is, this is the beginning. If you think it's going to get better under this regime, under this administration, you got another thing coming.
Let me add in here, Bran, because I think it's important. I agree totally that Obama has been the most in your face with all of this, but this has been going on for a long time. And I'm obviously not into the left-right paradigm, the Republican-Democratic system that seems to give us a choice when in fact it really doesn't. They're puppets on being used by the same puppet master. This has been happening for a long time, and of course Bush with the Patriot Act and the wars in the Middle East that were basically based upon a false flag so that they could cause this. Could you address just real quick that this has been going on for a longer time than just under Obama, but Obama is actually perfecting. He's the centerpiece. He's the actual show boy for wrapping all of this up. Could you just address that real quick?
Well, all we have to do is look at history. World War I, World War II. There's ample evidence they were just all false flags. That's ample evidence. We know for a fact now that Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin, McNamara before he died, he come out and said it was false flag. It never happened. And we seem to forget these things. It's just like give it 2 years and everybody forgets, which is really, really sad. Another interesting thing is take a look at the Davidians there in Waco, Texas. Everybody thought, there's this nutcase, and I don't agree with what he was doing, but he was well within his freedom and well within his rights to do what he was doing. He wasn't harming anybody else. And then it comes out these many years later that those people were marked for death. The evidence shows that they were executed. They were shooting them as they were trying to escape. There was a bunker there where they had put the women and children, and the women had gotten blankets, and they had soaked them with water and covered themselves and the children up. Well, and then they said they blew themselves up, except for all the evidence shown that the blast went in from the top.
Military grade explosive.
Yeah, they killed, what was it, 60, 70 women and children? Do you realize what kind of demons you're dealing with here? And this has, like Roy says, it's been going on. It's been going on forever, okay? And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And we've reached a point, and I'm not going to say we've reached a point, but the Illuminati, the powers that be, have reached a point. They know their time is up. People are waking up, and the petrodollar is collapsing. That means the U.S. dollar is collapsing. That means they're running out of money. Their money will be worthless. They're not going to be able to buy off armies and navies any longer. They're mercenaries. And here's an interesting thing. When you can't pay the people that you've been employing to kill everybody, to destroy everybody, they're going to get you. They're going to turn on them, and they will destroy them. And they know that. And there will be no place for them to hide on this whole earth, in the earth, on the earth. There'll be no place for them to hide. They know this. That's why I said in the last video, it is balls to the walls with these people. They know it is a matter of their very, very survival. So, like Obama, he sold his soul a long time ago, and he's going to do their bidding. And he's not even a good Muslim. Give me a break. The Muslims wouldn't even have him. And he's absolutely not a Christian, and he's not American. He's a communist. Okay? So he sold his soul a long time ago. He'll do whatever he's told to do. He has no soul. And, this Obamacare is a perfect example of that. He knows what's in that document. And that document is just nothing but a plan for total dictatorship. That's all it is. Anything else, Roy?
Yeah, finally, just kind of give us an idea of what we can or should do to get out of the way. We may not be able to save the country. Of course, we differ on this a little bit. I really honestly don't believe that there's any saving the system as it's currently put together. I do believe in saving the Constitution and carrying those values into the next world, so to speak. But give us an idea of what we can do to either put the brakes or actually change this so that we can have a hand in making the world, especially the United States, a better place, more along the lines of sustaining the individual rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, the first thing you can do, that was what I did. I drew a line in the sand, and I said, I will not support the system any longer. I will do everything in my power not to support the system. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to get violent. I'm just not going to support the system. And I'm going to do everything I can to educate people to what this process has done to us all, to the American people. So that's the second thing. You talk to your neighbors. Talk to everybody you can. It's funny, but I'll go into these stores where I'm fairly well known. And Roy was with me the other day, and when the first thing the guy behind the counter says, "Oh, here comes Mr. Conspiracy Theorist." He goes, "What's the latest conspiracy?" And I said, "Well, it's not a conspiracy if you can prove it. Do you want to hear the evidence?" So, yeah, I'm pretty well known on that. I talk every chance I get. And guess what? I got a few people actually to start listening. And, that's all it takes is a few people, and they tell somebody, and they tell somebody else. And next thing we get on a roll. And I think, we're supposed to be a voice of warning. The scriptures talk about that. Be a voice of warning. So, it's kind of hard to go out and proselyte as far as your particular denomination, but you can proselyte people and be a voice of warning and tell them what's coming down. And that is pure religion. That is pure religion. Take care of your fellow man, take care of your neighbor, take care of the widows and the children, the homeless. That is pure religion. Be a voice of warning. Tell them what's coming down the pike and help them get prepared for it.
Okay, I want to thank Brand again for doing this. My weakest area is finances. I mean, I understand the idea of the checkbook, and I understand basically the concept that the banks and the principle of usury and allowing others to control the currency rather than the Congress, where it was supposed to be initially, is a problem, because then you get private interests rather than interests in the American people as a whole, and we need to get back to that. The Congress needs to take that power back and control it. Hopefully we'll be able to get some more information